Live from Studio G in the heart of America, I am Steve Gruber, saying the things you wish you could every single day, fighting for you from the foxhole of freedom and defending this great nation. This is the Steve Gruber Show. Three big things you need to know right now. Number one, the Super Bowl set for 2 weeks in Las Vegas, and for Detroit, it could be the worst loss ever. Leading the 49ers in the second half by 17, but came up short. The Niners will play the Chiefs in number 58. Number two, the worldwide blowback on the globalists being led by ordinary farmers that have stood up all across Europe to reject the plans that would bankrupt their farms and allow the government to take over food production. We'll talk about that. And number three, the collectivist mentality is the cancer eating away at freedom in this country and around the world. The farms are, of course, one huge example of the globalist cabal trying to convince the gullible that somehow the world will be a more secure and just place if government takes over the means of production. Yeah, the government. Listen, if Mark Morano says the attacks on farms worldwide have been underway for a long time, it's not something new. Here it is.
I worked in the United States Senate Environment and Public Works Committee back in, it was 2007, the UN came out with their big agricultural report where they said that cow emissions were more harmful to the planet than all the trains, planes, and automobiles combined. And this was the beginning or the acceleration of going after the global food supply. And what happened in the interim time is there's all sorts of people in Hollywood, people like, Nicole Kidman pushing insect eating with Vanity Fair, actually like eating live insects, which I never understood where the animal rights people were with pushing that. We're seeing this madness spread everywhere now. In Ireland, they're going to cull 200,000 cows over 3 years to meet the net zero climate goals. Germany, this is their German newspaper, the Daily Bild, 1 sausage per month, according to the government's new proposal with the German Nutritional Society. This is real. It's happening. It's not theoretical. We're not talking about down the road. You saw the video clip. John Kerry announced earlier in June that we're now going to be targeting American agriculture.
Yeah, targeting American agriculture. Now, this requires almost universal ignorance, of course, of world history and the catastrophic failures in this exact arena many times before. Vladimir Lenin, who was responsible for the starvation of millions of Russians beginning in 1920 and stretching well into the 1950s, by then, of course, under the iron fist of Joseph Stalin. And it came about when the Soviet government seized land from farmers, many of whom were either murdered outright or shipped off to hard labor camps where they were literally worked to death. The numbers are hard to figure, but it was certainly in the millions. Not to be outdone, the greatest mass murderer in world history, Chinese Communist Party chair Mao Zedong, laid claim to all private farmland in his country beginning about 1957, and by 1959, he began the so-called Great Leap Forward. When crops and farms failed, and the move to collectivist farms caused the greatest famine in world history, a man-made disaster of catastrophic levels. An estimated 40 to 50 million Chinese literally starved to death because of the collectivists, because of the Stalinists, because of the socialists. And then they were all forgotten by the world. Nobody even teaches this anymore. The socialist apologists have a quaint little way of saying, if you want to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. Well, in Mao's case, he killed at least 80 million people in pursuit of the socialist omelet, but it appears he was the only one eating. Let's also be very, very clear about why they're targeting the farmers, because it is the very same reason that communists did it beginning in Russia in 1920. It's all about power. And no matter what flag you fly it under, including climate change, it's about controlling the food supply to control the people. That's what it is. Dr. Meryl Nass outlines the entire globalist power grab under the guise of climate change that will be all-encompassing. Listen.
It is a sovereignty issue. So the WHO wants the right to tell us what drugs we can and can't have and how we are to manage health emergencies in the future. But by also creating this thing they call the One Health approach, which enables everything else to be wrapped up into health, it seems that the sovereignty grab is going to be greater than just health. Right? If you say climate change, health is related to climate, so now we can call climate emergencies or something like that. It seems that it is a power grab, a financial grab, because the WHO will need to be funded much we don't know how much more, but it's going to be very expensive. The architecture for this whole, what is called international pandemic preparedness, it's also called the biosecurity agenda, has a few other names, but the architecture has been being built for the last 5 to 10 years, both in the U.S. and overseas, particularly in Europe.
Yeah. All very important history lesson to take in. As the globalist scumbags like John Kerry keep screeching about climate change and we must shut down farms to save the world, maybe a quick survey of the failures of Karl Marx on pretty much every single thing he ever wrote or talked about in his little red book should be reviewed and discussed before the government is ever again given any control over our food supply on any scale at all. The same could be said, by the way, for the giant factory farms like Smithfield, which has, well, it's been owned by China for 20 years now, the largest meat processor in America, and Smithfield controls roughly 80% of all hogs, for example. All pork in the United States, 80% controlled by the Chinese-owned Smithfield. Shocking when you hear the truth, isn't it? And when you tie that attack on agriculture into the open border policies of these same far-left globalist politicians, you have to ask yourself, what's going on? What are they doing? Let's be perfectly clear about this. An open border is the policy. That is the policy. That's why it's open. That's why more than 10,000 illegal aliens a day come into your country. And yes, it is yours, not theirs. Must raise a lot of questions. For example, what is this garbage bipartisan border security package? Yeah, quite a name for it. It's being pushed in the Senate right now. It would allow the president to shut down the border if the surge is too big, but would still allow 4,000 illegals a day, maybe more, day after day, every single day. By the way, the quick math on that, that's about 1.5 million illegals a year flowing in, give or take. Does that sound like border security to you? No, of course not, because it is not. It's just another slap across the face to you, the American people, the American taxpayers. Citizenship has become meaningless to these people who want to be global citizens, whatever the hell that means, and send you the bill for hundreds of billions of dollars while fentanyl deaths explode to well over 100,000 each year. Human trafficking, including the sexual exploitation of children, explodes, and the anger of ordinary Americans explodes as well. We must reject the leftist worldview that has failed 100% of the time ever since the Russian royal family was brutally murdered in that violent coup in 1917. And no, it was not a revolution. It was a violent coup. It's important to understand history. That's why we do some teaching here every day, so you understand the relationship between controlling the farms and controlling the people, or in the case we've discussed this morning, controlling the farms and killing the people. Because that's what happened in Russia, China, Cuba, Cambodia. The list goes on. We will continue here. We've got a lot to cover this week. We're just getting started. This is The Steve Gruber Show.